Let's take a look at the Kabul airport this morning because Taliban forces are now in command. They seized the final stronghold of U.S.-led forces in Afghanistan at midnight, just moments after the final American troops flew out. Flights are now grounded. The international rescue operation is over, sealing off an escape route that tens of thousands of people had used to get out of the country since Kabul fell to the Taliban 2 weeks ago. Now, while Canada and other countries have hopes of flying people out again, you can see the challenges ahead to get the airport up and running again. Right now, the tarmac looks more like a scene of a last stand. Military vehicles abandoned, cars hit by gunfire are overturned, and razor wire is now on the tarmac. Well, with that, let's bring in CBC News senior correspondent Susan Ormiston. She is in Islamabad, Pakistan this morning. Susan, the Taliban have now taken full control of the Kabul airport. We've been seeing some extraordinary images as they take power. Tell us a bit more about how things are looking.
Yeah, as dawn broke in Kabul, some very extraordinary images as the Taliban fighters, many of them sporting U.S. uniforms, military uniforms, and carrying U.S.-supplied rifles, strode into that airport out on the tarmac and actually went through hangars of aircraft left over from the U.S. evacuation. The U.S. says it has decommissioned all the aircraft left, but quite a potent symbol there for Taliban fighters having a look at what was left behind. And then the Taliban leadership coming out to the tarmac, setting up there with their fighters behind them, congratulating their fighters, and a Taliban spokesperson saying that this is a historical day, a historical moment, and we are proud of the moments that we have liberated our country from such a great power. So, as you can imagine, some extraordinary scenes and some very anxious scenes for many in Afghanistan who are worried about what lies ahead. There is no government yet. We're hearing here in Pakistan from the foreign minister that they expect an Afghan government to be announced within the next few days, but it's not clear what format that government will take and who will maintain the leadership and the cabinet. So a lot of anxiety for people who are still remaining in Afghanistan, the millions who did not get out and can't get out and want to stay. You know, there's long lineups at cash machines. Their withdrawals have been capped as the banks struggle to maintain the chaos in this sort of vacuum of leadership. We saw some scenes over the last few days of women scrabbling for food handouts. Real humanitarian crisis starting to develop as many Afghans, poor, were already suffering before this chain of events in the last month.
And that's an important point because I think many Canadians are wondering about Afghans who remain in Afghanistan and really the question about what lies ahead for them now that the Taliban is in full control.
Yeah, I think the real question is what will the government look like and what kind of freedoms or lack of freedoms will be instituted? Who will be the leadership? It appears it will not be a democratic government, but what shape will it take? And how will those rules trickle down not just to people in Kabul, which has been the most progressive part of the country, but also in those rural areas which are much more conservative? Will there be different rules for women and girls, for example, in rural areas like Kandahar as compared to Kabul? The Taliban has been making statements that they will govern more moderately than the last time they took over this country, but people are wary of these promises. And one of the first big tasks for the Taliban is to get that international airport up and operating again, a vital link for humanitarian aid and for also those people who still want to get out, including some with Canadian ties. They are negotiating with the Qataris and the Turks to secure and get that the airport operating again, but that may take some time. So in the meantime, people are really concerned and worried about what the future will hold for them.
Susan, thank you for that. CBC News senior correspondent Susan Ormiston in Islamabad, Pakistan. Now, watching all of this very closely is our next guest. Ali Mirzad is a senior advisor for Canadian Hazara Humanitarian Services. He has 4 family members who are trying to get out of Afghanistan right now. He's joining us in Ottawa. Mr. Mirzad, thank you for being with us today.
Good morning, Michael. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I want to begin with your thoughts right now. NATO forces are out of Afghanistan. The air bridge is now closed. What are you feeling? How are you feeling this morning?
I think we're all feeling a sense of desperation, Michael, hopelessness, because, as you said, everything is closed. The airport has been taken by Kabul, by the Taliban. And as Susan pointed out, Pakistan is not very open to the idea of receiving that refugee influx inland through their border. And the scenes that we've seen at the airport over and over on our television screen for the last few weeks, that's the scene that's currently happening at the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan, specifically the border through Kandahar called Spin Boldak. And it's just total mayhem. People stepping over each other. There's no U.S. soldier. There's no foreign troops to control the crowd. It's just total chaos. And people are being beaten. My relatives have been beaten by the border patrol or border guards of the Pakistani. It's just total disorder. And they got to the point that they closed the border for 4 days. So people are basically, the border, if just to picture it, it's just a desert and it's just a gate. So there's no water, no supply. Canada has said that they would save people that would go to a third country because the program of Canada was focused on those who work with Canada and those that flee the country and manage to flee. Now that these people have fled the country and made it to Pakistan, they're looking at Canada and other allied forces, how they're going to be helped and how they're going to get out of there.
Mm-hmm. A lot to break down there, but I want to begin with your family. You say they've already been experiencing beatings. Tell us a bit more. How has their life changed now that the Taliban has taken over?
It's like a 360-degree, the Hazara, our community, our people have been persecuted for the longest time throughout the history of Afghanistan. And, being beaten at the border is just, another layer of persecution. And now they're just, they don't know. They're lost. They're so fatigued and lost that there's no word to describe their emotion. They don't know what awaits for them. So my family, part of my family, made it the other way on the other side of the border, but my uncle and his son were stuck on this side of the border. So you're basically separated from your loved ones. And my uncle took a really bad beating, so they had to take him on the Afghan side of the border to a local medical clinic that could be found so that he could have medical treatment. But, I don't know how to explain it. They're just frustrated, they're tired, they're fatigued, and they don't know what's going to happen. He doesn't know if he's going to be able to make it to the other side. And there's a lot of smugglers that are basically trying to make a buck by giving people to the other side. But, not all of them make it. Some of these guys take money from people and then disappear. And right now, they're looking at us for answers, but unfortunately, we don't have any answers of how we can help them.
Mm-hmm. Paint a picture for us, if you wouldn't mind, Ali. You say they're trying to get across the border. They're being beaten at the border. How are they doing this? On foot, by car? How are they being stopped?
Right. So from Kabul, they go by bus to Kandahar, and that's on its own like a very dangerous journey because there's checkpoints of Taliban all across Afghanistan. And people were daring that journey just before Taliban took the airport. At some points, in some cases, they were being stopped and some people were being taken off of buses. Taliban were harassing people and, arresting people. But nonetheless, people have no choice. So that's the journey they have to make. And once they arrive to Kandahar, then they have to go by foot. It's about an hour or two all the way to the border. Once they get to the border, they are basically confronted with that scene similar to the airport. And at that point, you have to make your way through the sea of people to the doors. And, the border guards, if he's having a good day or not, he's going to let you through. And if not, then you're kind of stuck on this side. And if you insist, well, that's when you take a beating.
So concern for many people in Afghanistan, certainly a concern for the women of Afghanistan, and add to that the persecution that the Hazara community undergoes under the hands of the Taliban. So what would you like Canada to do? How might they be able to help the process right now?
Well, we would like to see Canada clarifying what exactly are their intention. When Canada announced the program of the 20,000 resettlement, it was very clear as the weeks passed that the program was really focused on those who work with Canada, and that made it somehow to the airport. And those who fled the country, I mean, this is what they're saying on their website. So at this point, the airport is closed, the embassies are closed, people have fled, those who managed to flee the country. So what is going to be the plan for Canada? Right now, as of this moment, and as of the latest communication that people are getting through the automated emails from IRCC or CIC Immigration, it's very scripted and very cryptic. It doesn't say exactly what the plan is, except that they will be safe. So we would like to see how that's happening. And it would be nice to see some type of Canadian presence on the ground in Pakistan Quetta, where most people have fled across the border, to monitor, because we need to hold Pakistan accountable to the international conventions, protection of the refugees, to make sure that they are taken care. I mean, UNHCR is not even open on the ground there. So this is really happening fast. It's I know everyone is doing their best, and we applaud the Canadian response, taking the leadership on this, but we need Canada to step up and to clarify how they're going to respond to the need of these thousands of people that managed to flee the country based on the promise of Canada that they will be saved.
Ali Mirzad, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.